Yep, so Genshin Impact is officially cooked. Obviously, this is an article that's come out by Sportskeeda, pretty much talking about a Genshin Impact leak for Skirk. Now, if you don't know, Skirk appeared in one of these story quests, like at the end of Fontaine, I'm pretty sure it was. And obviously, tons of people were very excited for it to come out. She had this kind of weird, kind of effect and stuff like that, which people thought might have been a new element coming to the game, which honestly, I think would have actually shifted a lot of stuff that was to happen in Genshin Impact, and was one of the main factors that a lot of players have, still playing the game for, is the fact that maybe we're going to get a new kind of quantum element or something like that, which would be exclusive to Skirk, and maybe, they're going to introduce more characters in the future that could kind of introduce that too. And people were very excited because it can shift things up from the pretty stale experience people have had with Genshin Impact at the moment, but it seems like that's all come crashing down with this leak, which suggests that Skirk could be a cryo version of Mavwika, meaning that there is no new element. There is not going to be a new kind of system in the game, and they're just going to go, okay, have a cryo version, And I feel like that's just kind of lazy, and this kind of proves to you how much Genshin Impact does not care about that game anymore. Obviously, I understand people were very excited for this character, and I was very excited too. I thought this could have been the change of Genshin Impact, and Genshin Impact could have actually picked up, what they were doing a little bit more. But honestly, this has just kind of solidified it for me, as they've just kind of, they're done with this game. They're going to keep milking money out of you for character designs and stuff like that, maybe. And then, they're just going to focus on Honkai and, more so Zenless Zone Zero to get even more money and everything like that. I feel like Genshin Impact has been way left behind, and, any kind of progressive future changes that could actually make the game experience so much better for players just isn't going to happen, and isn't going to happen anymore. Obviously, we've known this for quite a while, but I feel like this is just even worse. They say leaks about Skirk's kit and abilities in Genshin Impact have started making rounds online. Several leakers have disclosed bits and pieces about her potential gameplay, and most recently, Genshin Leak Flow shared some details which suggest that Skirk may function in a similar manner to Mavwika, which obviously, if you know, Mavwika is completely overpowered in the game at the moment. And yeah, it seems like if we're going to have another version of this, I think it just kind of adds to the whole situation that Genshin Impact is in at the moment. I feel like the entire game is just on fire with everything that has been going on with the voice actors, with the game itself, with some of the changes coming from the EU, with changing a lot of the pool system. I feel like this game is just cooked. I think with a lot of stuff as well coming out about a new region, which might actually be like a little bit of a filler region in the build up to Snezhnaya and everything like that. It's just like, are we really doing this? Like, we're really holding on this long and trying to milk as much money, because let's be real, even though Genshin Impact is doing so bad in terms of the game state, they're still making a buttload of money. Like, HoYoverse are buying 16,000 new yachts. Like, that's how much money they are making. And honestly, it's just crazy that people are still spending money on this game. They say recently, Genshin Leak Flow shared some leaked details about Skirk in Genshin Impact on the Telegram channel, which they obtained from somewhere. The information presented from them suggests that her gameplay might be quite similar to the Pyro Archon, and she could be considered a cryo version of Mavwika, albeit with some team building restrictions. Which again is just so disappointing at the fact that they didn't actually add a new element, or they just didn't add anything new, because that was the one glimmer of hope that Genshin Impact fans had, that something might change. And I know I've been repeating this quite a bit in this video, but this quantum thing could have been the change of Genshin Impact. It could have been something that would have been so beneficial to the game. It would have revived it for a lot of people. It would have made the game more interesting, depending on how they actually executed the new element itself. But instead, they just got lazy, and they just went, you know what, let's just make her cryo because it's easier. It's going to sell anyways because it's Skirk. Because let's be real, Skirk is still a very much wanted character no matter what element she has. She was very much like hinted in the lore and everything like that, with her being Tartaglia's master and everything like that. And obviously, she made that appearance earlier on. So people are still going to pull on this character regardless of what element she is, which just sucks, because it means that even though, HoYoverse have pretty much just been super lazy here and just decided not to, do what a lot of people were really hoping for, they're just going to pull anyways, because it's a character they want. They got cool character designs, and I think HoYoverse knows that. They know they can be lazy with this kind of stuff, and it's just so disappointing. I've been playing this game ever since, I think it's like the first couple 9 months or something since the game came out. It's just like, I've been playing this for so long, and it was so good at the start, and I really enjoyed a lot of it. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but let's be real, we all had a bit of fun. But I feel like at this point, it just feels kind of stale, and there's just this point where I think HoYoverse, if they actually put their foot down and did something and actually made a couple of meaningful changes, they could actually save the state of the game. They could save it, but they don't want to because they're making enough money, they're meeting their quotas, so they're not going to make these changes. They're not going to make these updates. They're not going to add a new element. Why would they do that? They're making so much money anyways that they're just going to release a cryo version of Skirk. Like a cryo version. You look at all of her abilities. What about that suggests cryo? You know, all of this kind of quantum, like all like sick kind of abilities. We thought, oh boy, here we go. There's actually a little bit more kind of depth to this lore. No, they're just continuing on with this just kind of like, I guess it's like performance-based, like artistic, whatever. Where it's just like, oh, here you go. Like they look cool, but they don't actually, they still have like the core, you know, abilities of Genshin Impact. It's just like, seriously, is this seriously the level of character design we're going for? You know, obviously, you know, I want to bring up like Wuthering Waves and things like that, which is something I play more often now, and they're bringing in all of these new interesting characters, which honestly is great, and they're introducing a ton of new sets, which have like kind of changed up the way that the meta works and everything like that, which keeps the game fresh, which keeps the game alive, and obviously with Renacita, you know, that's really improved it and kept people playing the game. And that's something that Genshin Impact needed to do. They needed a Renacita. They needed a new zone that would completely change it forever. Now, obviously, Fontaine was really, really good, but I don't think it was that change that they needed. It was, you know, they had some really good characters, really good story, which kept players going, but as soon as Natlan hit, I think a lot of people just left and they just got bored because obviously, yeah, it's just more of the same stuff. And I think people were bored of the story, of it just constantly repeating and repeating and repeating. I think that's gone on for way too long. I think, you know, the year, you know, the extra like year of like worlds and like the kind of filler arc, you could say, of the worlds is going to be so goddamn boring, and I think a lot of people are going to leave after Natlan ends. I feel like Natlan still has some people obviously holding on because they do have hope, but I feel like in the filler kind of area that is, you know, rumored to come out, it's just going to kill the game absolutely. And I feel like with Skirk and everything like that, and, you know, more boring characters or more boring character abilities coming out like this, it's just like, do we really need more cryo characters? Can't we have the addition of a new element, a new kind of thing, just to spice it up a little bit? Because, again, as I said, it's very, very easy to save this game. It's very, very easy to get people back into Genshin Impact and interested once more, but they just don't want to because, again, they're making enough money. They're making enough quota, and it's just really disappointing to see. You know, as someone who's played Genshin Impact for so long, you know, as I said, I've played it for ages, and it's just disappointing to see this game just crumble into something very, like, just disappointing, you know? I'm not even, like, that sad, because obviously Genshin Impact has already been on a down trajectory for, you know, the past couple of months, if not years. And I feel like, you know, this just kind of solidifies it for me that it's not going to change. You know, they're not going to pick it up after Natlan. They're not going to, you know, introduce some really cool stuff over in Snezhnaya. I feel like it's just going to be like repeat, end. I feel like that is literally going to be Genshin Impact. And it's very disappointing that it has ended up like this because, again, I really love the story. I really loved all of it. But again, they just really don't know how to execute a game later on. And that's what I'm really worried about for the future of other games as well. For example, Honkai Star Rail, you know, Honkai Star Rail, another HoYoverse game, which, you know, they're getting pretty far into their patches now. It's not looking the best, let's be real, you know. Start of the game, really great. People were really enjoying it. But we've had some of the Castro stuff come out, we've had some other stuff come out, and people are getting fed up of that as well, which obviously, you know, is causing a little bit of a kind of falling out and everything in the community. And you know, Xenosun Zero is looking really good at the start, but I'm very worried that in the future, Xenosun Zero is also going to have the same effect that these two games are having, where, you know, they get to like a 2.0 version, they get to a little bit later on, and it's just like, wow, we give up. Let's just make a new game. You know, I feel like that is literally the kind of HoYoverse method, you know? I give up, let's just make a new game, it'll probably make more money. And obviously we had that dev talk with Xenosun Zero, as I said, and it's looking very, very exciting, and I can't wait to see what comes out in the future for that. But again, I'm just worried because this is just something that happens with HoYoverse, and I'm less worried about Genshin Impact now because I feel like in my mind that's already just like sealed shut, that's done, it's over. But for future games that are coming out for HoYoverse, it's just like, can they actually make it last? Because, you know, HoYoverse are very, very good at starting up a new game, but they're very, very bad at maintaining it. So, yeah, we're going to have to see what happens with this in the future. It's very disappointing to see this news come out. Maybe they'll change it before the actual version comes out, and they actually will kind of put their foot down, but honestly, it's HoYoverse. I feel like they're not going to do it. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this. Do you think that this is going to be bad for the game? Do you think that you're fine with Skirk being cryo? Honestly, I hate it, as someone who like was really looking forward to Skirk as well. But yeah, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. That's all.